All right. Hello again. So now we will talk about kind of the next stage of my journey. So I had my surgery. They took out the lymph nodes, and there was no death in those lymph nodes. So the immunotherapy did not work. Of course, that brings up the concern. Okay, the survival statistics aren't great necessarily, but the standard treatment is outside of doing that therapy ahead of time is to take a year of the immunotherapy every, I don't know, 3 to 6 weeks for a year, to treat it. And they use typically either Opdivo or Keytruda. They're kind of the same thing under different brand names, to do that for a year. So anyway, I had my surgery. We don't think it was real effective. But now my colitis got better. So after the surgery, my GI issues were back to normal. So I hadn't even really mentioned it much to my physician because it started out, thought maybe it was nerves. So I called in once or twice and had some conversation with them. They don't want you to take any Imodium or Pepto Bismol or anything like that because they can't tell then if it's resolved itself. So, but I didn't, other than a couple calling in a couple times, didn't really mention it because again, it wasn't life altering. It was inconvenient, but it wasn't life altering. I could still work and whatnot. So, had that done, or anyway, so had the issue, but the diarrhea, GI issues had resolved. So, had my surgery. Biggest concern now is it didn't seem to work. So, what are we going to do? So, I'm ready for another PET scan. Oh, and I forgot to mention that in the first kind of series of this. As soon as they found the lymph nodes that were swollen, they ordered a PET scan. The PET scan was totally clear, other than the lymph nodes in my neck. So praise God for that. Had a prayer meeting at the church, to the church praying for me. A wonderful praying church. So had that PET scan was clean. Well, after the surgery, we have another PET scan, and it is clear. The PET scan comes back clear, so all is well. Then I'm like, okay, again, love my oncology team in Charlotte. They are cutting edge, just as good, I think, as anybody. I don't, have any complaints. But I did think, okay, well, is there another opinion? Do I need to get a second opinion? Because again, very much of the mindset: is there a clinical trial? Is there something else I should be doing? Not having anything to do with lack of confidence in my Charlotte team because I think they're wonderful, but I just thought, is there something else out there that I need to check on or investigate? So I decided to get a second opinion. And I was nervous about getting a second opinion because I didn't want my Charlotte oncologist to think that I didn't have confidence or faith in him and his team. But I did go out to MD Anderson in Houston, again, supposedly the best in cancer treatment. So I go to MD Anderson, and they agree with everything that was done in Charlotte. So that it was a great visit. It kind of reiterated I got the best you could get medically. The only difference is, so after surgery, about 2 months after surgery, my colitis had returned. And my Charlotte oncologist was of the mindset, let's not do the year of therapy trying to prevent it from coming back since it looks like it didn't work anyway, given that pathology was, the cells were not dead. It was live cancer still. And the MD Anderson oncologist agreed with everything except said, well, hey, you might want to still try it, because even if it didn't kill the cancer that was in you, maybe it'll keep it from coming back. So they both pegged it, maybe a 30% chance it comes back. Since the immunotherapy didn't work, maybe it was more like 50-50. So anyway, that's kind of the thing I got out there. They focused in a little more on the colitis at the time. And again, it had kind of returned after surgery. I hadn't really mentioned it other than initially to my doctors in Charlotte because it wasn't really bothering me. But then it got a little worse. For the first time in my life, I was introduced to prednisone. I had never taken prednisone in my adult life, 47 years old. It was amazing that I had made it that far and never had to take prednisone. My wife would tell you I was probably the devil on prednisone. It did make me very edgy. The team that I worked with at work probably said I was a little edgy. But other than that, I mean, it made me feel good. I'm chunky, got a bad ankle, things like that. All my pains went away with the prednisone. Higher doses of prednisone. It was 80 milligrams a day. So I did that, tapered down off that. It did not totally resolve the GI issues. It helped, but it didn't totally resolve them. So then I had a Remicade infusion, which kind of got things back on track. Then I said, okay, I was trying to decide, do I take treatment? Do I not? What do I do? Charlotte oncologist, super supportive of my decision. He's like, we're not sure if it'll be effective, but it is the standard of care if you really want to do it. But we need to be mindful of your GI issues, your thyroid, other side effects you've had. So I decided to do it. I'm one of those people. I had to try it. If it came back, I'd be second guessing my entire life that I didn't try it. So in August, I took another treatment. Remember, I'd had the initial double treatments in February. So I took a treatment of Opdivo in August, and about 3 weeks later, the GI issues started up again. So obviously, my colon is very sensitive to the treatment. At that time, I decided, it doesn't appear that it really worked well anyway. Let's just observe. Okay, kind of a dangerous word in cancer. Nobody wants to observe, but let's just observe and see what happens. So that was after another PET scan. My doctor has been great. He's ordered PET scans every 3 months. And at this point, it was maybe 2.5 months to kind of decide what I wanted to continue to do with treatment. So then he puts me on a medication called budesonide, which is kind of a steroid that works in your gut to try to stem the GI issues. It helped some, but still had GI issues. Just things weren't formed, with the colitis. So as a result of that, then he ordered a colonoscopy. He just said, hey, we need to verify that it is the medication, nothing else going on. So I just had my first ever colonoscopy, my routine screening colonoscopy 3 or 4 years ago when I turned 45. So here I am 3 years later getting another one. And it came back clear as far as my colon looked clear. No issues in my colon. They did some biopsies. Those biopsies did show that my colon was basically infiltrated by white blood cells from therapy, just caked up in there in the kind of the tissue, which is what was making me, have a lot of diarrhea. I think the good thing about that is that my colon was healthy. One of their concerns is you only have one colon, and if this immunotherapy attacks your colon, you can end up with a colostomy and some things like that. But the colon itself looked okay, but it's just the treatment, the therapy had, created this problem they call it microscopic colitis. So right now, I'm not having, at that time, not getting any treatment. Got to get rid of the colitis. So he sends me for some Entyvio infusions. So this is a series of 3 infusions along with the budesonide. Do that, start in December. So now we're getting up on 1 year of cancer diagnosis. So in December, I get 2 doses of the Entyvio because you get one, 2 weeks later you get one, then 4 weeks later you get one, 6 weeks after the initial one. Get the 3rd dose in January. Things are great. The Entyvio fixes me, for lack of a better word. It really fixes things. Taper down off the budesonide. Stomach is still not totally normal. I still have a lot of gas and whatnot and some kind of stomach upset occasionally, but it's 95% normal. My stools are back to normal. So that's what happened with that. Another PET scan, I had another PET scan in November, got the all clear. It was great. Scan again in 3 months. So then this past February, that would be yesterday was the 28th, which again was my birthday. So a week ago, on the February 21st, I had kind of my first of the year PET scan. And unfortunately, the results were not ideal. 2 spots showed up on that PET scan. Of course, I'm very concerned. Does this mean the cancer's back? And if it is, the immunotherapy didn't work well. There's not a lot of other treatment options, although my physician does have one kind of recently approved clinical trial type treatment option that he wants to try if it's truly a recurrence. And I say truly a recurrence because we don't know right this minute. 2 spots showed up. The concern was my original cancer was over here, took it out, everything looked good. But the recurrence is actually on my other side, on my right side. There's a spot in my arm and a spot kind of on my right hip in fatty tissue, not in bone, in organs, just in fatty tissue. And the uptake in a PET scan, they shoot you with this radioactive stuff or sugar molecule, glucose with some radiation, and they then kind of scan you, and then it determines where that glucose speeds up. They see it in your cells that are metabolic. At the rate it absorbs it. Uptake, I guess is the way to put it. And I had these 2 spots had increased uptake. Not uptake to the level to say definitely cancer. My uptake in these, it was obvious on the PET scan, cancer. This was not obvious cancer. But they're indeterminate, and it said rescan in 3 months. But they're concerned. And my oncologist, I think, is concerned because there's two spots. Had it been one spot, I think he would have been like, no, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Because again, it's the trick in this, or what surprised him, is he would have thought that soon if I was going to have a recurrence, it would have been more of a local recurrence, or even on this side of the body, but it's way on the other side of the body. And had it been one spot, I think he would have said it was an isolated thing, something's inflamed, not a big deal. But because of the two spots, he did express concern. So again, the radiologist recommended we rescan in 3 months. This is why I love my oncologist. He's like, nope, we're going to rescan this in 6 weeks. Let's see what's going on so we can get on it if we need to do something. But of course, I'm concerned that this is a recurrence, and what does that mean for treatment options. So that's where we're at. Right now, there's really no treatment. Nothing's happening. We're going to rescan in early April, right after Easter, a couple weeks after Easter, and then see what those scans show. So right now, my prayer, and what I've got the prayer warriors praying, is that those two spots will not be there in 6 or 7 weeks, or they will not have grown. So we'll see what that shows. In the next video, I'll talk a little more about kind of my faith and cancer and how all that works together. But that's my story and where we're at now. So I had, to recap, found out I had cancer in my lymph nodes. It came from a melanoma on my head. Had surgery to remove it. Have had clean PET scans. Immunotherapy didn't really work. We tried that neoadjunctively, and now I have a potential recurrence just 1 year in. But again, I say potential because we don't know that for sure. So that's where we're at right now. My oncologist also took it to the tumor board to discuss because it was kind of odd, these spots. And they recommended same thing, rescan in a couple months. So that's what we're going to do, and that's where we're at right now. But I just wanted to make this, kind of give some overview to help anybody else that may be on this same kind of cancer journey. So see you soon.